Welcome. You're here because you want to build a strong, lasting center of excellence, something that can grow with your organization without cracking under pressure. If you're in this session, chances are you already have the start of a structure in place. You're not breaking ground for the first time. You're looking to remodel, reinforce, and expand. Before we add new floors or fancy features, though, we have to make sure the foundation can support them. You've probably all heard of the Leaning Tower of Pisa, a global icon, but not exactly the brand you want for your program. Those builders, they rushed construction without properly assessing the soil, and by the time they realized the foundation was too weak, the whole structure had already started tipping. Sure, it's famous now, but mostly as a punchline for bad planning. That's why we're here, so your COE becomes a model others want to copy, not a lesson in what to avoid. Today's workshop is built around 5 critical layers that every successful COE needs to solidify your foundation, stay strong, and scale smart. Those 5 things are your maturing role as a program manager, your capacity planning framework, your ownership model, your content optimization strategy, and your influence approach. Along the way, I'll share real customer examples so you not only get the theory, but also see how these ideas come to life in actual programs. Let's make sure what you're building doesn't just look good, it lasts. The first layer is all about you. What kind of architect are you? Understanding your natural style is essential because it shapes how you interact with stakeholders, how you prioritize work, and what blind spots you might have. The WalkMe product owner is our demand-centric doer who shapes intake, owns the backlog, and connects ideas to impact. Their superpower is prioritization. They excel at figuring out what matters most to the business. But they need to watch out for getting lost in tactical noise and losing sight of the bigger picture. Who's accountable to what standards? The WalkMe capability lead is our craft-centric expert who obsesses over reusability, governance, and enablement. Their superpower is consistency and scale. They build systems that can grow. But their challenge, sometimes over-engineering solutions when simplicity would serve better. The third archetype is our WalkMe strategy partner. This is our outcome-centric visionary who operates at the executive level, steers direction, and frames problems. Their superpower is influence. They get buy-in for big initiatives. Their pitfall is staying too high level without connecting to delivery realities. Most program managers vacillate between these roles, but we typically have a home base. Knowing yours helps you build better relationships, recognize when to adapt your approach, and grow with intention. So take a second to reflect. Which one closely describes my natural tendency? And which area could I develop to become more well-rounded? Our second layer tackles a universal challenge. 6 new requests just landed in your inbox. Your team's maxed out. Can you take this on? Should you? When your COE grows, demand grows too, but your capacity stays finite. This is where most programs start to lean like the Tower of Pisa, risking collapse. Most programs have some sort of intake process. The difference between a program that scales and one that fails often comes down to not just intake, but a capacity planning framework. Let's assume you have a structured intake process already. Requests come in, and you do discovery into context and expected impact. The way to level up is to establish delivery pacing. You must define what your team can realistically produce per cycle and be brutally honest about it. For the product owners out there, they already know this as velocity. Many companies use agile principles here and come up with a unit of measurement such as a project that they can use to baseline. For example, 1 project equals about 5 user workflows, and 1 user workflow can be equal to something a user does, so about 10 native steps. A Fortune 500 financial services client we worked with realized through capacity mapping that they were overcommitting by nearly 50%. Once they implemented a simple velocity model, treating 1 project as roughly 4 to 6 workflows, they not only improved delivery timelines, but also reduced burner build-out dramatically. And stakeholder satisfaction scores rose by 25% within 2 quarters, simply because expectations were better managed. Once you've established the velocity, implement an SLA with your stakeholders. Set expectations for scoping, building, reviews, and go-lives. When stakeholders know what to expect and when, trust in your program increases dramatically. Here's where capacity planning gets really powerful. Once you start measuring what you can deliver, you unlock the ability to make strategic resource decisions based on data, not just gut feeling. This isn't about working faster. It's about working smarter with the right people. I worked with a team recently that was drowning in requests until they analyzed their workflow and realized they needed specialized skills in one particular area. Adding that single resource increased their overall output by 60% because it removed a critical bottleneck. Without capacity planning, you're risking a leaning building. That lean is your team burning out, quality slipping, and eventually everything potentially collapsing because you said yes to too much. I've seen entire programs struggle not because they lacked skill or value, but because they couldn't manage their backlog effectively. So take a moment to reflect. Does your backlog reflect what your team can actually deliver, or is it more of a wish list? How do you set expectations with stakeholders about what gets done and when, and where does that usually break down? And do you have the data you need to make a case for resources? A single architect can design a building, but they can't maintain it alone. As your COE grows taller, you need more than just builders. You need a community. Think of your contributors, champions, and business users as the maintenance crew, the decorators, even the tour guides who show off what you've built. A thriving COE doesn't just execute projects, it cultivates a network of people who share knowledge, learn from each other, and collectively raise the organization's digital maturity. Here's a couple ways you start. 1, create shared spaces, regular forums, Slack channels, internal showcases, where builders can exchange tips, lessons learned, and successes. I worked with a customer who launched a monthly Builder Jam, a 30-minute open mic for sharing new ideas and hacks, and within 3 months, participation doubled. 2, make knowledge visible. Templates, playbooks, decision trees, and libraries. They should be easy to find and easy to use so that new contributors build on the best of what already exists. One COE I supported realized their contributors weren't building badly. They just didn't know where to find good examples. So a simple template library improved quality by 40%. 3, celebrate contributors. Recognition programs like Builder of the Month motivate people to share their expertise and grow their skills, not just deliver solutions. When you invest in the community, ownership happens naturally. People aren't just following rules, they're taking pride in being part of something bigger. Here's what a mature, community-driven COE looks like. The core team are your community stewards. They don't just set standards, they curate best practices, they mentor new contributors, and they host knowledge exchanges. For some organizations, this might even include a training specialist on staff that works to up-level functional builders. Your extended team are your knowledge multipliers. These are your local champions who adapt practices for their business units and spread innovation horizontally. Then you have your business users. These are your growth partners. When properly enabled, even occasional builders become advocates for quality and innovation. Building this kind of ecosystem doesn't just increase your output, it lifts the skill level of your entire organization. That's how you move from isolated wins to enterprise-wide maturity. So take a moment to reflect. Who are your hidden champions today, and how can you empower them to teach others? How are you shining a spotlight on great knowledge-sharing behaviors? And what's one thing you could introduce this quarter to strengthen your builder community? Even the strongest buildings need upkeep. Without regular maintenance, cracks form, rooms get cluttered, and elevators start breaking down. Your COE content is no different. Regular audits, sunset decisions, and optimization rituals are like structural inspections. They keep the foundation strong, the hallways clear, and the experience clean and welcoming. Here's a proven 3-part framework on how to keep your tower strong and your content purposeful. First, formalize the task of quarterly audits. Assign ownership for accountability. One organization I worked with had a lead auditor per platform. This was a builder that was responsible for the quarterly audit, and a reporting template they were required to follow and report back to the program manager. Next, make the sunset or refresh decision. It might be counterintuitive, but more content is not always better. Sometimes removing the wrong piece is more valuable than adding a new one. One client created a simple quarterly process. They identified their bottom 20% of content by usage, then made deliberate decisions about each item. Their rule was simple. If something stayed in the bottom 20% for 2 quarters in a row, it had to be dramatically improved or removed. This discipline transformed their effectiveness. And finally, measure the effectiveness of your changes. Back to the company with the bottom percent review process. Over 2 months, they reduced their library by 50% and saw a 30% increase in user engagement because finding the right WalkMe content became simple and intuitive. Your content is your product. Treat it like one, maintain it, improve it, and make sure it earns its place. The best programs approach content like product managers. They measure, iterate, and improve based on actual usage and feedback. Especially when resources are limited, you have to make choices that matter. Take a moment to reflect. Do I know what percentage of my content is actively being used? What's my process for reviewing and retiring outdated content? And what percent of my content is the exact same as the first time I published it? The final layer of excellence is making your tower visible, valuable, and welcomed. Let me give you a real-world example. When the Eiffel Tower was first built, it was not instantly celebrated. In fact, Parisians hated it. Critics called it an eyesore, a monstrosity, a tragic lamppost. But Gustave Eiffel didn't just build it and walk away. He marketed it. He gave private tours to influencers of the time, he hosted events, he partnered with the press, and he positioned the tower as a symbol of innovation. Today, it's one of the most iconic structures in the world, and that's not by accident. It's because the right people came to understand the value at the right time. Your COE is no different. Let's walk through how to guide stakeholders along their own version of that journey. Building stakeholder support for your COE follows predictable stages. We're going to look at 4 standard customer journey stages: awareness, interest, engagement, and advocacy, and how you can market your program intentionally at each one. First, awareness. You need to answer, what is the COE and why should I care? This is your elevator pitch moment. Think internal launch decks, all-hands meeting spots, and quick win stories shared in Slack or newsletters. One program I worked with created a 30-second overview video that executives could easily forward, which instantly expanded their reach and visibility. Next, interest. You must address, how does this help me or my team specifically? At this stage, stakeholders are curious, but they need relevance. Create role-specific one-pagers, tailor win stories by function, and map your value clearly to each group's priorities. What matters to finance isn't what matters to sales. Meet them where they are. Third is engagement. Now they ask, how can I get involved? Make it easy for stakeholders to participate, whether they're requesting support, contributing as builders, or co-owning initiatives. This is where that clear intake process, enablement guides, and open office hours are essential tools. Lower the barrier to entry. Finally, advocacy. The question becomes, how can I champion and share this? Nurture your advocates with impact metrics, leadership shoutouts, and shareable case studies. One COE I worked with created a quarterly champion spotlight where stakeholders could showcase their wins, and it sparked a virtuous cycle of enthusiasm and expansion. Managing your stakeholder journey intentionally turns passive awareness into active ownership, and that's how you create a true movement around your COE. Take a moment to reflect. Do I have specific tools or content mapped to each stage of the journey, or am I relying on one-size-fits-all communication? Which stage of the stakeholder journey is currently my strongest, and which one needs the most focused? So let's wrap it up. Picture your program 6 months from now. You've taken the advice that resonated with you from this session, you've drawn up new models, you've executed on your plans, and you've started to see them come to life. If your DAP program were a real estate listing, what would it say? Solid foundation, room for expansion, smart upgrades, strong community, gorgeous view of the future. Thank you for taking the time to be here today. If you're ready to take the next step, check out WalkMe's Operational Excellence Assessment to build a focused execution plan powered by our 50+ resources in the DAP Blueprint. You've laid the groundwork. Can't wait to see what you build next.